Good afternoon and welcome to another edition of Agency Brief, the EAC member-only communication. Today we have Geoff Hunter, EAC's Industry Liaison Officer, who's here to give us an overview on the current CPD workshops that are doing the rounds across New South Wales as we speak. Good afternoon, Geoff.
Hello, Damien.
The workshops have certainly been a success with most of the venues having good attendances and the feedback being extremely positive. Can you tell us a little bit more about the commercial and retail leasing management workshop and what attendees can expect to learn in this 4-hour session?
Thanks, Damien. That's a really interesting one, because what started with a course that we thought was more focused on simple commercial, because that's what the majority of agents were doing, has really enlarged into something that's quite more comprehensive. What we discovered was that the distinction between commercial and retail was causing some difficulties for practitioners, particularly those that weren't experienced in depth within the retail environment. They weren't aware that the rules were so comprehensive.
Yeah.
And whilst it's not rocket science, once you've got the discipline and the procedures down, it's quite easy.
Yeah.
But it does take a little bit of establishing. So we've now got the focus at 50-50 on retail and commercial, so that the distinction between the two is quite clear, and practitioners will do the session understanding exactly when a retail lease applies and when a commercial lease applies. The other thing that we came up that we were quite surprised about was the dealing with the recovery of outgoings from tenants and the application of GST to those outgoings. Even though the owner had paid GST originally, tenants have now got to pay the owner's GST in a different calculation. So that created some difficulties, but we've now thankfully got a system that will clarify that for practitioners. So it's taken a lot of the strain out of that distinction and how they manage the tenancy itself.
Now, you've run a few of these courses now. You're finding that with the agents or the attendees that there has been a little bit of a confusion of the differentiation between the commercial and the retail leasing?
Well, it came as a surprise, but definitely there has been. And I guess that was the first hurdle to overcome, was the definitional problem. And it's not really, if it fits the definition of retail, then that's quite clear. And if it ain't retail, Damien, in the vernacular, then it's probably commercial. The commercial side of it is easy compared, but once you've got the definition straight, then it settles into a pattern.
And it's definitely wise to get that right if you're looking down the barrel of a visit for an inspectors, that's for sure.
Absolutely, and what's more, the professional indemnity implications for using the wrong leases for the wrong premises are quite significant.
Absolutely. Our property management 2014 workshops is also doing a circuit about the same time, so one day on, one day off. For those that have attended, say, previous ones in earlier years, what would you say that they could? What would be the main benefit of attending this one in 2014?
The big difference, I think, well, it's twofold. Firstly, we do update the content anyway, so Property Management 2013 was comprehensive for its time, and now 2014 has now encompassed all the recent developments, like swimming pools, which has again recently changed, like condition reports, which have again changed, and any changes to legislation. So we're updating the content of the course all the time as we go through. So the course we deliver in February may be different to the one we'll be delivering in June, July, for instance. So they keep changing. But I think the big difference that many practitioners aren't yet aware of is the fact that the rules for CPD changed as of last October. So CPD remains, and as well it should remain, within the New South Wales environment, but the government saw fit to change the delivery of that CPD and some of the scope of which we could cover. So EAC as a recognised industry body can now deliver CPD in the same format, 4 hours, 12 points, but without assessment. So it means that we can also relate the content more to the day-to-day practice issues than having to relate it to a scope of a licensing topic or some other module. So we think it's more relevant, it's more focused, and without assessment it means that we can then have a bit more time to go into the questions and the detail of it. So the whole structure has changed, the delivery has changed, and it's a lot more flexible and I think a lot more beneficial for the practitioners.
And probably a lot more fun as well, not having to worry about a test at the end.
Yeah, there's no written assessment anymore. So
yeah, I know. Well, basically I've done quite a few courses myself, and I've always found that you sit through the 4 hours and that's all well and good, but you get back to the office and you think, oh Jesus, I wonder what the answer, or I wonder how you'd handle that problem. Now, can the attendees take away anything with them where that can be helped?
Well, the manuals are quite extensive. I think for the 2014 Simple Property Management, that's about a 50-page document, and for the retail commercial leasing, that's I think over 60 pages. And of course we ask them to highlight the most important bits on the way through, and they do relate. All those documents are interrelated so that they follow a pattern and a proper sequencing. And most importantly, of course, the trainees and our members can ring our helpline.
Of course.
And for those that come through the training that aren't members, well, we can support them in regards to the issues that were raised at the training. So if there's confusion over it, then they're at liberty to give me a call.
Absolutely. So with that said, who do you think in an office would get the most benefit out of attending one of these courses that we've got going?
It's really right across the board at the moment, because for principals who may not do property management but who would like to expand their business into the retail and commercial environment, which, let's face it, is really quite lucrative, and once you've got the systems in place and understand the procedure, then it's not all that difficult. And sometimes many say it's less onerous than residential, but the commissions are higher. So I think for principals, if they'd like to expand the scope of their business, then they should be looking at the commercial and retail course, because it does add that extra dimension and income earning capacity and adds value to the business as well.
Absolutely.
For the simple property manager who just doesn't want to do commercial or retail, then they should come to the Property Management 2014. And the principal who hasn't been close to property management for some time, and many of them aren't, let's face it, they like to delegate the jobs, but they're busy doing the sales side. There's a good review within that for principals to be updated on the current changes. So it really is selective from their perspective. If they see benefit, then it's worthwhile them doing it.
Yeah. Now, I've sat through quite a few of your courses, Geoff, and I know they're always entertaining and quite satisfying as far as information is concerned. But for someone that hasn't, if you had to pick the most single important piece of advice you could give to a principal or property manager, what would that be?
Gee, Damien, you're full of good questions. That's a tough one. I mean, across the spectrum, it is hard to single out what is the most important factor, because property management is all about detail and systems and procedures. It's not, well, it is always somewhat difficult, particularly where you've got a tribunal decision that's going contrary to the way you want it. But I can only get back to have the proper knowledge in the first place. Make sure you've got an office where the systems are in place and you've got clear written procedures so that all the staff know what they should be doing and when, and then follow the yellow bouncing ball, because once you've got your systems and policies in place, it really should just fit the routine. But it's getting that established.
I can imagine there might be some of our members sitting out there and saying, oh, I'm not sure if how relevant or how up-to-date our systems and procedures are. Is there anything that a EAC or as a training organisation we can offer those officers to make sure that everything is in place?
Well, I think the first step is to look at whether they do comply. And if they don't comply, then they need to have another look at that, and we can assist them with the compliance review. So that's one aspect of it, which will give them the compliance insofar as the regulations and the legislation is concerned, and the documents they should have in place and the basic system that they should be using to achieve those outcomes. Beyond that, there are so many different systems out there, and some of the franchise groups have their own, and some of the software providers have created their own internal systems, and most of which are perfectly valid. And we wouldn't seek to want to change those. All we can do is augment them by making sure that the input is correct, and that's the way I think it should follow.
And if officers are unsure, they can always give our agency helpline, our agency practice helpline, a call on 1300 137 161, and that'll go through to Geoff. And if you have any questions as a member, I'm sure Geoff will only be too happy to answer those. Thanks, Geoff, for the roundup. Registration for anyone that hasn't done the course, especially property managers or principals, don't hesitate to go to the EAC homepage, eac.com homepage, look for CPD calendar, click on that link, it'll take you through to where they all are. Now I know there's some coming up on the 7th of May in Foster and the 8th of May in Port Macquarie, so if you're in that mid-north coast area or Hunter area even, make sure you jump on and get into those. And I know there's one on the 11th of June in Sydney down here at Rose Hill.